So I'd like to introduce the first host of the Government Grants panel this evening. It's the UNSW Founders 10X Program Manager, Melissa Pye.
Yay.
Thank you, Melissa.
So Jane is with us tonight, and she has a wonderful job of assessing the applications that go in for something called the Accelerating Commercialization Grant. So she works with the founders to make sure that they've got everything in that application so that they're successful in getting that money from the government. So welcome, Jane. Next we'll have Jane. Jane is the co-founder of Kintel, which is an awesome platform that's done incredibly well during COVID. So I don't know if you know, during COVID, a lot of us actually turned to video to find out information. They so happen to launch a product that is around video where you can connect with people from all around the world and get information on a specific topic from advisors. So you can jump onto the platform, become an advisor, or you can find some information from anybody else on that platform with any skill set that you have, from cooking to juggling to marketing to anything. So welcome, Jane. Yes, go for it.
Recently, we have also launched our enterprise branch. So we are also hosting the UNSW Alumni Connect platform. If you want to get a one-to-one video advice from any of our alumni from different industries, you can also come into the platform. It's a private group exclusively for UNSW members.
Thank you. Good stuff. And we have, we're matching outfits. We have Lisa, who is the co-founder of Share with Oscar, and that's an on-demand parking app. So if you've got spare space in your driveway, garage, front lawn, or you're looking for a spot around a busy location around a beach, you just jump on, you can find out in real time where you can find a park. They did a cracking deal last year with Secure Parking, and they've just launched into the Melbourne market as well. So welcome, Lisa. Yay. So what tonight's panel is all about is when you've got a startup, you're definitely going to need some money somewhere along the line. And there's lots of places where you can get money from. You can get it from your own bank account, you can borrow from the bank, you can turn to family, friends and fools, the old FFF. You can raise money from angels and investors, and you'll hear a bit more about that in the panel afterwards. But the good news is the government actually has got some money out there to support you on your startup journey. So tonight we're going to talk about the different offerings that the government offers, and we're going to talk a little bit about the New South Wales MVP grant. We're going to talk about the Boosting Female Initiative, Boosting Female Founder Initiative, the money that's available there, accelerating commercialisation, and the fourth one is the R&D tax incentives that you can get on your business. So we're actually not going to talk too much about that one for that. Before we get into that, I will hear a little bit more from the panel and about what they actually do. So we are going to go reverse order. Lisa.
Okay, so I'm the co-founder of Share with Oscar. As Mel described, it's a peer-to-peer parking app. So we've got driveways and carports, but also commercial car parks listed. So we're all about trying to solve the parking pain in cities by allowing you to find, book and pay for parking quickly and easily.
Superb. When did you launch?
We launched so our pilot was in 2017. So we actually launched that at Bondi Beach, which is where the idea came from, which was me circling the streets of Bondi Beach for just much too long, and I actually ended up pulling into a fellow's house and paying him $20 to park in his driveway. So that's how the idea for Oscar started, and then so we thought that'd be the best test bed for our pilot. We did that over summer. Every single weekend, it was myself and my co-founder just handing out flyers to just anyone at the beach, and then just doing flyer drops to all the residents. And we got 100 people sign up really quickly to share their parking spots. And then we had to get a bit smarter about getting those parking spots booked. But since Bondi, we've then done University of New South Wales, the CBD, and now Melbourne.
I received one of your flyers. That was a very nice one. So for Kintel, we started 2018, and we launched our prototype 2019. It's a huge project, because what we do is that it's easy to think about is one-to-one and very soon one-to-many, because our multi-party video will be out in a few months, hopefully. One-to-one video advice, it seems easy, but when you think about the product, we are building a scheduling software. We are building our own video, so it's like building your own Zoom we can't use Zoom because it doesn't deliver a very smooth integrated experience. We also have to integrate payment. We integrated the rating review, so we are like building an Airbnb plus Zoom. So we need a lot of investment upfront to be able to work. So I think this is kind of related to the topic of funding as well, and AC really have helped us a lot. We started the company because when my previous career, I was a faculty member of AGSM, so I was teaching a lot. But in the recent years, I realized I spend more time helping my students connect with industry experts or alumni from different industries than spending time preparing for my lectures. So actually, they want to talk to each other. They don't want to talk to me. I kept talking to my husband and now co-founder about it, and he said, oh, we should build a digital hub to allow people to connect with each other for knowledge sharing and immediate advice. So that was the starting point. It started at AGSM in UNSW.
Brilliant, thank you. And Jane, let's hear a little bit more about what you do, and then we're going to jump into you describing kind of the government grant landscape, but a bit more about you first.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I come from quite a diverse background of corporate roles within the health industry. Started my own business, been running that for 10 years in consulting and redesigning models of care and things like that. Now working for I4 Connect, and I4 Connect is a delivery partner for the Oz Industry Accelerating Commercialization Grant. So my role there is to find people that have these amazing technology that's at a proof of concept or TRL 5 or 6, and then helping them to access some money to run pilots and to commercialise. So in that role, I'm a guide, I'm a coach, I also do due diligence and also represent that person at the committee to get the grant. So it's a mix of roles, which is really exciting. I really love that. I get to meet some amazing people. And my other role at the moment is I'm also a mentor in the Boosting Female Founders program, which I think you are also as well. So, yeah.
Cool, excellent. Now, we have this beautiful slide up here that you've provided. We'd love you to walk us through this slide. So this is an overview of the opportunities for the different grants that are offered.
Yeah, so it's a little bit hard to read, but I'm very happy if you send it out if people are interested. But essentially what we're trying to communicate is depending on where you're at in terms of your business, is your idea moving to a concept, proof of concept, to technical feasibility, to commercialisation, there's something for you along the way. Now, the bottom half is the national grants, and the top half is really the state-based grants. So you can see where I come in, which is here. So I'm right at the point of kicking into emerging, and that's where we enable you to break out. Prior to that, we would normally, often a lot of people come in and they've had the MVP grant, which the minimal viable product grant is a state grant, and that's where you can access $25,000. It's matched funding, and you can do it more than once. So that's a really good grant just to get your proof of concept going, and then to move into the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant. Now, the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant is also a match funding grant. It's up to $1 million, so total of $2 million, if you've got $1 million to match. It's based on a project that you're doing to commercialise something that is either going through pilot, clinical trials, building your market. It's not about sales and promotion, but it's about getting you ready to deliver impact, and that's what's really important.
Can I just ask a question? With the matching, do you have to have your $1 million before you can apply for the grant, or if you get the grant, you then have to come up with $1 million?
You have to have it before, yeah. So it is a real juggle. At that point in time, you're probably looking for investors, which the next session will be really handy. And then we go hand in hand with that to top up the pool. We say that we support businesses that are a little bit too risky for everyone else. So, and that's really where we are, because you'll find that there'll be some people that might be the 3 Fs that you mentioned that will support you in a certain way, and some of the seed funding or angel investors. But the bigger investment market are like, oh, it's a little bit, it's not quite there yet. And that's the gap that we fill. We help you to get to market so that then you can really commercialise and deliver impact.
Cool, thank you for that. So basically your first port of call is the New South Wales MVP grant. And as mentioned, it's up to $25,000. It is match funding again. Applications are open all year around, and it is for pre-revenue business as well. So if you're early stage, definitely look into the New South Wales MVP grant. It's not an onerous process to get that either. Some of the other applications, and we'll touch on that in a minute, so require quite a bit of effort to do that. So definitely look into the New South Wales MVP grant. If you jump on business.gov.au, it's actually a really good website, really well laid out, and got all the vital, important information there. So that is your first port of call for a grant. I think before Commercialisation Australia, before Accelerating Commercialisation Grant, there's a new initiative that the government launched last year called the Boosting Female Founders Initiative, and that's match funding again between $25,000 and $480,000 as well. They've had round one. There were 51 successful applications for that, and around $11 million was handed out there. They've just closed round two, but the government has made a promise of up to $52 million that's going to be provided for that grant to encourage and support more women that are definitely underfunded and under-resourced in terms of getting support. So it's mentorship support as well as money for that. And Lisa and her co-founder, Louise, were successful in round one in getting that Boosting Female Founders grant. Would love to hear about that, about the process of applying, some tips. How much did you receive? And it is all public knowledge as well with that. So run us through that process.
Cool. All right, so we applied for the Boosting Female Founders grant. I think round one opened last year sometime around April or May. And so it's a two-step process. So at first you need to submit an expression of interest. So it's kind of like the first round. And for our one, I believe there were 2,000 applications, and then they narrowed that down to 200 to submit round two. And then out of those 200, 51 businesses were lucky recipients. So I think our number was really funny because of the way that we structured our finances and business plan, but I think we got somewhere in the range of $323,500 or something. You can apply for a clean number. And then as part of that, we had to find matched funding. So it's quite an interesting process. Between them announcing that you are successful for the second round of applications, you have 6 weeks to complete the next set of applications and pull together all these business materials and business plans and documents and financial plans, as well as come up with that matched funding. So in hindsight, I would have done everything, prepared a little bit earlier, but it was a really quick crash course of fundraising for a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, this was kind of middle of the pandemic during, I think, August or September. So I was just, connecting with angels via Zoom to try to get some matched funding. But in addition to our small angel round that we got, we also sought out partners to provide some funding as well. So an example is Secure Funding wrote in a letter of support to say that they will also provide funding for our project. So the grant is all about a project that you define. So it's not just here's a couple of $100,000, run about with your business. You do really need to come up with a structured business plan and how you're actually going to deliver on that project and all of the milestones and the gateways and so forth. So that took a bit of time to actually come up with the plan and with a budget and exactly what we're going to do. And part of that for us was actually about launching into new markets. So to date, prior to last week, we were just in New South Wales, and this fund really allowed us to start expanding into Melbourne, which we've just done, as well as Brisbane.
Nice. Tips on applying?
So So I'm not an assessor, so I don't, know what they're necessarily looking for. But we did receive some tips from, people within government and other people who've done grants. It was the first time that this grant was actually launched, so there wasn't much information about it. But a tip that I received, and Jane, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is government is traditionally very conservative with funding. Perhaps, different to, your VCs and your angels, they're really looking at low risk, sure things with this particular fund. So that's why when you even look at the questions that they ask you, it's all about mitigating risk and assessing the level of risk in actually giving you the fund. I guess my main tip is to have a really clear, achievable project that, with the right milestones and something that's actually really well thought out.
Can I add something to that? Because I think that's a really important statement that you've made there. And often, while I said we support risky people, we are still risk adverse, and because it's public money, right? And it's got to go to the right people. It's yours and my money, and so it's very important that it goes to the right place. So a way of getting around that is making sure that you've got evidence. And sometimes people, when we say, okay, so you've said that you've got this much match funding, I'm going to need documentation of evidence. So it's not about you personally, it's really about justifying and adding value to your application so that there's minimal questions or, concerns. So evidence is really important.
And the other thing I was going to add is, so you can apply for anything between $25,000 and up to $480,000, and you actually submit your interest at the beginning, so you can apply for either of the two pools. We were really toying with the idea of, do we just apply for a smaller amount and, we assumed that would actually increase our chance of getting the fund. But in the end, we did decide we might as well just, go big and, seek the $323,500. And if you actually look at the recipient list, so I do suggest if you are applying, look at the 51 recipients. You'll see that it's all types of businesses. It's not just tech businesses. There was one that makes I think organic pet food, something about, I think there was one for Indigenous communities. So they're really looking at a whole broad range of different types of businesses. But they, the average funding amount was around the $300,000-$400,000 check size. So I think that speaks to the risk averseness, is that the word, of government, because they want a successful project.
Cool. I've got another question for you. When you filled out your application, did they support you along the way, or where did you get support to fill out your application? Because filling out grant applications is quite a process. We often fill them out for university initiatives as well, but it's quite, there's some nuances in there as well. So where did you seek support from? So
we didn't really go out to seek support, but we did speak to Jonathan Chack. Is he in the room? He gave us some tips on what, government look out for. So our process was, we actually spent quite a bit of time. It was quite laborious to actually write out all of the answers and then just get a second pair of eyes on it. So Jonathan reviewed it, and another lady that was recommended to us also just reviewed the final application, kind of, checking for, kind of any discrepancies or any red flags. But that was the kind of way that we approached it. I'm sure there are some great support resources, so I definitely would recommend tapping into those. And even for round 2, I've spoken to multiple female founders, so speak to ones who have previously who have been successful with the applications and get some of their tips and guidance.
Yeah. So look down the list, you'll see the companies, go and find them on LinkedIn, try and connect with them on LinkedIn and get that support. Yeah.
So can I just ask you, I presume you had to acquit the grants at the end. Can you give a bit of background about how you manage that? Because I think it's important to know what you have to do to acquit the grant before you actually go into it, otherwise you can end up in trouble. Yeah,
so we're not at that stage yet. So our project is, I believe it was 14 months, and so for us that'll be March of next year.
Yeah, the primary focus is really going from where you've shown you've got technical feasibility So you've run that prototype within the real world market. You've still got to adjust your product, usually, based on the feedback that you've had. So you've got to run other trials. If it's a med tech type thing, you might be into other clinical trials. You're ensuring your IP status. You're ensuring your regulatory status if that's needed, your quality management system, your go-to-market strategy and business development. So it's all getting ready for that defined, hungriest market that you've said, if I get all this done, I'm going to be a hero. So there are some things that are not covered in the grant. So plant equipment is not covered. And there's a whole list of things in the guidance document. Sales and promotional and marketing is not covered. So it's generally just to get you ready. And obviously you've got your other matched funding, so people would use that for their plant equipment if that was in that state. Yeah.
Cool. That is a good segue into Jane, who Kintel successfully received the Accelerating Commercialization grant. Was it this year or last year? My years are blurring. This year?
This year around December, January?
Yeah.
January.
Cool. So tell us...
January, yeah.
Tell us about that process.
So we receive, so I think we approach an AC facilitator last year around April, May. But we really started the process in July because we were waiting for a major angel check to come in. We were quite conservative. We know that some other applicants, looks like even before the check come in, they start the process because after the check came in, when you start the process, there's still a few months that you're burning the money. And when you submit the application, those few months will reduce the money you have in the bank. So it's a bit tricky to plan the timing. So this is one small tip from the experience is that you will have a few months when you're preparing for the application and the money in the bank is decreasing. So we have been preparing since July, and then we received the funding in January. So it's for like a 12-month long project, and the project is mainly to build our enterprise solution. And during the process, there's a lot of evidence collecting, there's a lot of due diligence. I feel that after the due diligence, our AC facilitator is like becoming the soulmate of our business. They will know everything, every aspect. They will call your investors, customers, and enterprise partners. So it's very, very thorough.
Sweet. And did you, when you're fundraising, whether you're looking for seed or angel money or you're putting grants together, there's generally one person on your team that might be their absolute dedicated role to go for that. Did you split it between you and James, or was one of you responsible for driving that process? I
think we do it together because we are husband and wife, so we talk about it all the time, 24/7. So James is more the number person because you need to run a lot of numbers. There's a huge spreadsheet you have to give the forecast, and I'm more the qualitative, writing about competitive analysis, strategy, answering the question about what if Google compete with you. There's like five pages of arguments. So I'm good at the kind of arguments. So I think we work as a team. So we combine the quantitative part and the qualitative part. So,
perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Jane, you were going to share some tips with us about what you've seen with applications and what to do and what not to do, essentially.
Great. Thank you. I think the first thing is when you look at, and you can see there's so many grants. When I'm specifically talking about the Accelerating Commercialization grant, it is one pathway of many. So what we want to do is we talk to you and really understand, is this the right pathway for you? So bear that in mind when you're going for any of the grants. Which is the best grant for you and why is that the best grant? So when I'm talking to people that come in as an expression of interest, and with this grant, you actually need to apply for guidance before you're invited to apply for the grant. So that's actually a good thing, I think, because you get someone like myself to go beside you all the way. as Jane mentioned. You were very fortunate that you were able to reach Jonathan, who's one of my colleagues. Just to have that other voice to look at things is really important. So the key things we look at are primarily, the most important one is probably you. And it's like with a lot of the programs, it's your openness to coaching and new ideas and really thinking about what you're presenting, is it in the right light? So you are very important, and we'll find that with teams that get to the end and get the grant, they're often ones that we've really built a really strong relationship with. And that's important for us because you have to have really open conversations and be really honest with each other. The other thing that's important for this grant in particular is novelty. So novelty is sort of two areas, one being that you can protect it with IP. So we know that as novelty, and it's very easy to see and to have evidence. The other one, and there's a few products and services that are hard to get that IP, your software platforms, things like that. How is it novel? And often a lot of people that come, they say, yeah, it's a great idea, no one else is doing it. And we're sort of like, well, look, have you really checked out that no one else is doing it? So your passion about your idea is really valid, but also to look around and see what else is going on and what makes you different. That's what novelty is about. And why can't someone else do it? What is stopping them doing it? So that's really important. Team, novelty. The other things are market. What's your market traction? What is your market in itself and the focus? A lot of people say everyone's going to want it. Everyone is not a market. It's really who exactly is going to want this and who is the first people that are going to want it. Because this grant is about getting out there first to market. And the last thing is really value proposition. And of course, remember, you propose that value, but it's your customers that say that is value. So a lot of that is around, have you done your customer research, your customer discovery? Have they committed to you that, yes, this is something they would value and they would buy? So they're all the things and the quick tips that really to think about, particularly for this grant. I think too for any other grant, it would be very similar. So even with the MVP grant, boosting female founders, they're very similar things that the government is going to look for to invest in your business. So it's really valuable time spent.
Fantastic, thank you. They're great tips. Oh, Jane. No, Jane. Yes.
Yeah. Just for the record, I think my co-founder and we in total spent about 2 months' time preparing for all the documents. So there's a huge investment as well.
And don't forget I'm reviewing them all.
Oh yeah, I love hard work to read all the things we have written.
An investment that paid off as well.
Yeah,
so,
we thought some people kind of suggest maybe you can hire a consultant or something, but sometimes it's very hard. The time you spend explaining the logic to the consultant is actually more than you write it up yourself. So sometimes there's pros and cons of having a consultant writing up for you.
And that's another good point that we talked about. You can get people to help you write your grants, but Jane, you were saying that you work directly with the founders. You don't want any middle person in there?
Yeah, we like to work directly with the founders, and I've got an example of someone that I'm working with now, and there's a business consultant, and I can see when he's come in because the whole conversation has changed. We've gone back a few steps. It's great to have someone that can help you to write if you're not very good with it or it's not your strength or you're busy, but don't rely on them putting it together. There are grant writers available, but again, we would want to make sure that it's the founder that's providing the information because it has to be supported by evidence, and that comes from the founder.
Good point, yeah.
Sorry, my daughter is my partner in our enterprise, but she's not participating in the New Way program because she's employed full-time and has 2 small children. So when we're ready to start applying for grants, do you need both of us to be, because 2 months is a long time to be, and I did read somewhere else that you have to count on it being 6 months full-time from starting the process to getting the grant. Does she need to actually be part of the process at this stage, or are you happy to deal with just me as the founder, or would you be happy to just deal with me as a founder?
So I guess great question. There's a couple of things there. The grant application can take between 2 to 6 months. The panel or the Entrepreneurs Program Committee meets approximately every 6 weeks, so that's 10 times a year. It's a rolling grant. So depending on your level of readiness, it will depend on which meeting you're presented at.
Yeah.
Sorry,
With regards to your
my
question
daughter
as
is
to
my
does
partner in
she's
our
part of the
enterprise, but
business,
she's not,
very, very busy.
she's not participating in the New
If
Wave
it was
program
me,
because
I'd
she's
probably
employed
say,
full-time and has
love
two
to
small
meet you
children.
both together.
So when we're ready
Let's
to
start building a
applying for
relationship,
grants, do you need
and then
both
let's
of us
divide the
to
work.
be- 'cause 2
And
months
so
is
it's
a long
really
time
about
to be-
the
and
ongoing
I did read
meetings,
somewhere
who's
else
got the
that you
best
have to
time,
count
but
on it being
knowing the
6 months
team,
full-time
because,
from
as I mentioned, the
starting
team is really
process to getting
important.
the grant. Does she need to actually
We've got a
be
little
part
bit
of
of
the
time. If
process
any other questions,
at this stage,
please
or
pop
are
your
you
hand
happy
up,
to
yell
deal with
out.
just me
Any
as
other
the
questions
founder,
from
or
what
would
you've
you
heard
be happy
tonight?
to just deal with me as
Yeah.
a founder?
So the application comes through your business, and your business must be a registered Australian business. You must have an ABN.
Can it be a company?
Yes.
That is a company, PTY Ltd.
Sorry, I'm
Yep.
a lawyer. A business is not a company.
Sorry. See, and terminology is really important through the whole thing, so thank you. It should be a company.
I'm very finicky when it comes to words.
You cannot be a not-for-profit, but there is another area where you can be from a research entity or another entity that has a commercialisation department. If you're in that situation, the maximum grant you can get is 500,000, not 1 million matched.
Yeah. Yes.
So with the question about the MVP/the female-led grant, are there any benchmarks that you think we should use to see if we're ready? So things like, I don't know, number of customers or revenue or anything like that?
2 different grants. So the New South Wales MVP one is pre-revenue, and the other one is essentially post-revenue as well. So that would be an easier one to go for, that pre-revenue one. Go on, Liz.
I don't know about the MVP, but with the Boosting Female Founders grant, again, kind of going back to that whole risk-averse thing, it does look like all of the recipients had customers, had traction, and things that they were really looking for is, what level of support you'd also get from your customers or your partners. So you do need to show evidence of that. So I would say if you were going to apply for the Boosting Female Founders Initiative grant, to have a level of traction before you invest the time.
And as Mel said, with the MVP and the accelerating commercialisation, they are pre-revenue. So one of our eligibility is that you have not had first sales, but you have to show customer needs or motivation to buy it. So you need to have done that work. In the AC grant, we call that what's your evidence of market traction, and also any of your customer discovery work in terms of is your value proposition really a value? So incredibly important.
Maybe I'll add to that. How we solve that or try to provide evidence is that before we apply for AC grant, we already have the P2P marketplace running. So we have traction there to show our technology work and people want this. And then with the P2P, what we have built for the P2P marketplace, we have prototype a very simple solution for the enterprise, and we provide it for free for a few friendly organizations to try us out and provide us a letter, a reference letter that they're really happy with it. And if you build the enterprise solution, we would like to pay for it. And that letter, we collect quite a few letters, and those are very important as evidence.
Cool. Yeah.
If you've already received previous grants, is that a problem in terms of applying for these grants? Because it's just, it's income for the product, even if it's not actual customers.
The full answer to that is it depends. So it's really about the other grants that are involved. So a lot of our recipients or applicants have received the R&D tax exemption. Sometimes that's part of their match funding, so that's okay. The Boosting Female Founders is post-revenue, so generally it wouldn't align. That's the main right thing, isn't it? Yeah? So the accelerating commercialisation, you need to be pre-revenue, so it's a different grant in that state.
If it's
Pre-revenue does include other grants like the R&D tax exemption, but if you're going for other grants, you need to make sure that it's not double dipping on the project that you're applying for this grant for. So that's the key thing if you've got other grants happening.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much to the panel for all of your insights and experience that you've brought and shared with everyone today. So thank you.
Thank you. Can I add one little plug?
Yes.
If you
go.
wish to have a one-to-one chat with me about anything we talk about today, feel free to go to Kintel, put in my name, and you'll find me, and I provide pro bono advice free for you. Thanks.
Awesome, Jane. Always selling. Always selling.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this event today. And of course, thank you to our panelists. It's an honour to be hosting them today. 3 incredible women, very inspiring, have done a lot of amazing things in the ecosystem.
Yeah, we are.
Hell yeah, high fives. And so I'll start by introducing them. I've got a few questions, but obviously welcome some questions from the audience as well. So please don't hesitate to ask those. So I'll start with Cheryl Mack. So Cheryl is the National Head of Community and Comms at Stone & Chalk, which is an impact network and innovation hub, and they're catalyzing commercialization in founders in emerging tech sectors. And previous to that, she was actually the CEO of StartCon, so some of you may have attended that event. It was the largest startup event in Australia, over 4,000 people. She built it from the ground up, and it was also the biggest pitch competition in Asia Pacific. And so it's not a surprise that she's known as the pitch doctor. And actually, all 3 of these panelists I've seen reviewing pitches, and they are amazing. And on top of that, Cheryl's running multiple initiatives, including 361 Angel Club, to boost capital raising in the ecosystem, helping both founders and investors as well. So anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I do not.
She's also interviewed over 400 high-profile investors and founders as well. So very impressive. Thank you, Cheryl.
Wow.
Hello. And then, of course, we've got Eliza Jackson. And Eliza is an investment professional. So she started off looking at publicly listed companies on the ASX 200, and then onto Series A and B in VC, and now at seed stage at MacDoc Ventures. And so she said it's been quite a journey working her way up the risk curve. And other journeys, she's actually journeyed from Melbourne originally. And so she's a big fiend for coffee. So top tip if you're meeting with her to pitch, get her a good coffee, I think.
Good tip.
And at MacDoc as well, so she's leading new recommendations for investments, and also works very closely with the portfolio company founders. And she says it's a huge privilege to be learning from those founders every day. So thank you so much, Eliza. Anything you want to add?
No.
And last but very not least, Natasha Rawlings. Love the colour of your jacket, by the way.
Yeah, no. Twinsies.
It's perfect, yeah. Natasha has been heavily entrenched in early and mid-stage startups, so for over 10 years now. So she's co-founded and led a company, award-winning company called Streethawk, and it's location-based and mobile marketing startup. And she's also the CEO of Head Over Heels, which is an organisation that helps women tech entrepreneurs scale their growth as well. And now she's on the other side of the table, and so she's investment manager at Uniseed, which is a seed fund that was created by universities and CSIRO to make big companies from great Australian research. So thank you so much, Natasha. Do you want to add anything to that? Sorry. Wonderful.
Best introductions ever.
Well, I had to do a good job. I had to do you justice. So, and that's not even everything that comes in. Okay, so I might start with you, Eliza, since you've worked across the full spectrum. I know that we have a broad audience here, so can you tell us what's seed, what's Series A, what's VC and angels? Can you tell us about some of these buzzwords?
So
Buzzwords
existential.
I've been using.
So existential. So I guess like broadly, the most important thing is like most startups never raise capital. So the capital raising journey is like not for everybody. So like to launch into fundraising is the wrong thing to do. both on this panel and for various businesses out there. So the general like funding journey, which maybe some of you are already on, is you'll cobble together a few of your like maybe friends and family or people around you to like help you get the business off the ground. We call that like the triple F round, or the like family and friends round, to put it politely. The third F is for fools. Like, that's generally the first source of capital that you have alongside the grants that we were talking about on the previous panel. So you take a little bit of capital to get your business off the ground, and then usually it hits a point where you need some capital to hire a software developer or bring somebody else on board or whatever it might be. That we used to call seed, we probably call pre-seed now, or maybe an angel round. And so you kind of, the usual step would be, if you're on this capital raising journey and you're not kind of generating enough revenue to cover all of your expenses, you'd raise your family friends round, then you may go raise from an angel or a few angels that you might put, say, a few people raising, like maybe each person is going to give you $50,000, you raise $150,000 as your angel round. That would be kind of a pretty typical type first bit of real external capital, of like people who don't want to give you money because they know you, but they think your business is a good, viable idea and they want to see it grow. So you kind of go from that stage of being taking on external capital, managing other people's money, and being an investee, like an investment company for them, to then really professionalizing a little bit further. And usually each round you do gets larger because the company you're running is getting bigger underneath it. And so you've got more employees, more people to pay, more costs, so you need to raise more money. And so as you kind of progress over time and grow your business, you'll raise more capital, and the type of person you raise from changes. So if you raise from family and friends, then you raise from some angels. Your next port of call is generally a venture capital firm, which is like, the easiest way to explain it is like, lots of very sophisticated investors give this venture capital firm a little bit of money each, and they invest it on behalf of them as a fund. And so they make the investment decision on behalf of a lot of other people. So some of those people are like super funds, which we all have an interest in, but some of those people are also like high net wealths who could otherwise be doing it themselves and individually, but would rather have a diversified approach and have kind of a portfolio of startups. And so that, in a nutshell, is what venture capital is about. The venture capital journey, kind of, you go from being a seed round, which would be your first round, which some people call your like angel round, it's a bit the same, to then kind of raising somewhere between, well, I had this discussion today with someone, I think raising $1 to $5 million is still a seed round. They were saying a seed round's got to be under 1.5. But then you go on the letters journey from A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth until you're like Uber raising a Series F or whatever. And so that's the kind of typical fundraising journey, but it's worth saying that that's changing a little bit. Like, there are different sources of capital in the market than there used to be. Like, we take equity, right? So we take a share of your business for giving you the money that we invest. There are now like different kinds of loans and like alternatives to, instead of rocking up to a bank and getting a credit card or getting a loan, there are different ways of getting debt financing from different players in the market now as well. And it's basically becoming an increasingly competitive space to find the best startups and fund them. So what that means from the startup side is like, you have lots of options on what capital is, but very existential question and probably too long an answer. But that is the journey of fundraising.
That was perfect. Yeah, right, yeah. That was amazing. I think we can all go home, actually. That was, nailed it.
I'm out.
Thank you so much. And also appreciate that there are lots of different types of investors as well, and everyone will look for different things and have a different mandate. So I would love to hear from each of you, what's your investor profile? How much would you typically, how big is your check size? Maybe you could talk about fund size, what sectors?
Yeah, sure. So I can start. So I am your typical angel investor. I seek to find companies that are at the absolute earliest stage, which will probably fail. But I'm a glasses overflowing kind of optimist. So I go in very, very early. My check size is actually somewhat smaller than what you would typically see. Most startups will say their minimum check size is $25,000, and then I go in and I say, that's nice, but my check size is 10. Will you take that? And some of them say yes, which is great. So I've got a couple of rules, not rules, but general kind of thesis as to why they should take my money. Normally, people say, what's your thesis on how you invest? And I go, here's why I convince them to take my money. And those are basically, I can help. And I can help in one of literally only 3 ways. One, my background is in marketing. So if you're needing help and support in content, storytelling, inbound B2B sales, funnels, any of that type of stuff, I'm quite good at. So one of my founders called me today and was like, I can't figure out my one-liner. I'm like, okay, we'll sit down and figure it out. Stop freaking out. The other one is if your target audience, i.e. the customers you want to target, are also other tech companies, I know them all, so we're good. I can open all those doors. And the last one that I can be helpful in is if you want to go the VC-backed route. So Eliza just mentioned that 90% of startups and companies do not take VC funding. Some of them can't get it, others it just doesn't make sense for, and others go for different types of funding. So if you are choosing to go the VC-backed route, I know a lot of VCs, I can open doors in that regard. So if you hit one of those 3 boxes, I can be helpful, and I will also have fun if I can convince them to take my money, as I said. Some of them do.
Yeah, so we're an unusual fund because we only look after 4 universities in the CSIRO. They give us money to invest. And so we manage a $50 million fund, and it's an evergreen fund too, which is a little bit different. So that means that we don't have a hard lock at the end of 10 years, which means you invest right at the beginning and hopefully at the end you've got some sort of return to your investors. Because we invest in drug therapies and a lot of deep technologies, they need longer than 10 years. So we just have an open fund every 10 years, we get another $50 million and so it keeps going. And our check size to begin with is usually $500,000 to $1 million. And then what we do is we put a little bit in every round up to $2.5 million. And then we manage a follow-on fund, which is another fund of $20 million. And then if it looks like the business will exit, so that's at one of those later letters in the alphabet, and we think, okay, you know, we think it's a sure thing, then we'll use a bit of money up to $2 million from that, from the follow-on fund. And another thing you've got to know about funds like ours is that we have people often coming behind us at the betting table. So we'll put in our money and then we've got family offices and other angels who go, okay, well, we'll take that bet too. And so they'll put in money behind us. So sometimes, you know, and in the first round, and you do need this for drug therapies and things like that, we'll do up to sort of $4-5 million between ourselves and our partners, basically. Our fund, and it's mentioning theses and who you invest in, because every fund has its flavour. And before you reach out to funds or even angels, try and figure out if you are their favourite type of ice cream, right? Because otherwise you're sort of wasting your time and theirs. Mostly they won't come back. I'm nice and go, well, we can't actually invest in you because you don't come out of one of our unis. But and I try and, you know, give them a bit of a lesson on being a bit more personalised. But thank you. But you know, we invest in every different flavour of technology out of these institutions, which makes us really unusual. And I say we often go where angels fear to tread, because we invest in technologies really that have high business risk and high technical risk. And often, you know, if it's a software investment, 2 of those things are negated a little bit by the time you get to your seed round. You know, there's some early customer traction, a minimal viable product is built. In deep tech, you don't often get to do that. So it's a funny area that only the crazy people support, or people with a lot of funds, but it's awesome fun.
Very good segue. So I work at TikTok Ventures. It's a family office. So before I was describing like a VC fund takes money from a lot of people, we just take money from one family and invest it in people. And so it's called a single family office. When you take money from multiple families, it's a multi-family office. But we operate like a VC fund, and we write checks at what we call the late seed stage. So I was describing, like, before you go on the lettered alphabet soup journey of Series A and beyond, you raise a couple more rounds than you probably think you do. Like, a lot of founders think they'll take a tiny check from their parents or whatever, and then they'll be off on their Series A. That's just not how it works from a traction perspective. And where you get the business when you want to raise money from a venture capitalist, where they're going to take like 20 to 30% of your business, like, you want to be ready for that. And we're there before that. So we come along when you've started to sell to customers who weren't your first network customers, and when you're starting to diversify your revenue a little bit more, but you're still learning how to sell and you're still learning what the levers are in your business to pull. And so we help with that process to get you along to the point where you're ready for kind of a $5 to $10 million round from another venture capital firm. And so that means we write checks of usually $500K to $1 million, so similar to UniSeed. And the types of businesses that we love are kind of what we've invested in to date is 3 broad categories: e-commerce, infrastructure, enabling businesses, like stuff that helps you buy stuff online, B2B SaaS, but like understandable things that you can see, use and know, so like Canva, Quill, Law, Path, Easy Collect, stuff that you can understand, and then marketplaces and networked businesses. So we think businesses that scale with network effects are really powerful. That's it.
Nice. We're on portfolio companies, so let's talk about them. Any amazing female women entrepreneurs in your portfolios that you'd love to mention and what they stood out?
Sure, I've got one. It's actually a husband and wife team, which is something that some investors don't like. We've invested in a number of them, and they're like all at the top of our portfolio, including Mel and Cliff at Canva. I'm going to mention is Amazing Co. They're out of Melbourne. They're a business where you like will go and buy a picnic or a mystery experience to do around your local city. It's founded by a husband and wife, Jeremy and Sylvia is just so excellent operationally. And it's actually, she's the perfect counterbalance for Jeremy, who tries to run a million miles. And Sylvia's like, hey, let's make sure we're making the right decision here and let's pull back. So excellent female founder.
Yeah, I invested in a business called Wildlife Drones, run by Dr. Debbie Saunders. And so she was a wildlife researcher who had a problem, which she couldn't find animals quickly enough in the bush to get all the statistics she needed. So she developed a sensor that went on a drone that instantly mapped wildlife. And it turns out a whole bunch of other people had that problem. And even before we invested, so this is, deep technology, she had $165,000 worth of pre-orders sitting there that she couldn't fulfill because she couldn't make this sensor. So I think she's one of the best entrepreneurs I know, hands down. And that shows you what, someone with an open mind can do.
Cool. I'm going to be a little contrarian. I'm going to name 2. One is, again, a husband and wife team, although slightly different. The wife has that deep domain expertise that you really love to see, so founders who really, really know the industry and the problem that needs to be solved. And her partner is the CTO, so he does the tech side of things. So we like to see that combination, but she's like a huge go-getter, and I love it. The other one I want to name is Remote Social. They went through the Antler program, and Jess is just like a gun, solving the problem of how do you get people within your company to engage and play and have fun with each other when they're not in the same location. I think COVID has shown that this is the thing that's here to stay, and even though a lot of places are saying come back to the office, a lot of companies have just simply hired anywhere in the world that they want, and then they're wondering, well, why aren't our employees friends with each other? So they solve that problem. Well, hopefully you're going to solve it worldwide, which I think is cool.
Natasha, before you were touching on the fact that once you invest, other people follow suit, I can imagine it's because you do such an incredible job with due diligence and whatnot. Could you talk a bit more about your process for investments?
Yeah, it's a really good one to know. And it sort of frustrates me, it is a sales process, right? When you come and talk to any of us, you're selling. So never forget that. We're nice and friendly looking, but, we have teeth and we really want to get to the guts of the matter really quickly. And so when people come and start selling to me and they go, right, I've got to close this in a month, I'm like, well, I'm not even going to bother talking to you. I'm not going to waste your time because our process will take probably about 6 months. And actually, it's usually like that for other VCs and investors as well, unless there's a lot of competitive tension, and then they might, sort of move on it a bit. So that's what I generally find too, that other VCs don't move as quickly as, you would want them to. And so we have quite a crazy, honestly, elaborate process, which you probably would expect coming out of institutions like this. So what happens is you get to know me or one of my colleagues, and we have discussions sometimes for years with researchers, right? And then there comes a day when you're like, okay, I'm ready to present to your investment committee. So I help you get your pitch ready to our investment committee. And what I'm trying to do is make it as perfect as possible, because I know my colleagues are really hard-nosed and critical, and they're not, overflowing with optimism. They are the most cynical beasts I know, right? So I'm like, okay, I've got to get it past them. So I make it perfect, and then they present, and then they get ripped down. But hopefully what it is it's a this or a that. And with either of those, they go through due diligence. Then I go and I, go into everything about that company that I can. I can even do police checks and things like that sometimes. But, we'll look at contracts where I'll call up customers. I'll really want to get to know you, the key people in the business, everything. And that can take a while. And then what happens is I present back to our investment committee, right? I've got to do this huge, crazy paper. I've got to present, and then it's like, and again, it's either that or that. It's pretty binary at that stage. I've had one of those that really sucks, because I really believed in it. But so, you've got to have someone like me. What I've realised. Oh no! Well, the diligence took a few months, and that took about 30 minutes. It's savage, yeah. But anyway, that's life. And so you need someone. What I've realised is you need someone like me in a fund, or you need a champion. If you haven't got someone gunning for you, you're never going to make it. And so then you get that, and then we get a board approval as well. And then you got to go through legals at some point too, which is a lot more painful than you realise. So that's our crazy process. I know a lot of other VCs don't have all of those steps, but they can still take that time.
I might add to that. Can I just add to that? Yeah. One of the, there's a couple of things, actually, there's a number of things that VCs and family offices and people who give you money will not tell you in a public forum. So I'm going to tell you them in a public forum. Well, I'm going to say a couple of them. You can add some others. One of them is...
Stop the recording, please.
One of them is there are very few that publish their investment process on their websites. But the good news is that you can ask them, and generally they will fairly honestly tell you what that process is. So if you do get a meeting, one of the questions that you should ask in that meeting...
Oh, I so disagree. Oh my God.
Do you?
It's the worst advice, I reckon.
Really?
I get it, and I'm like, how dumb are you? Have you not read it online? Have you not Googled it? Have you not asked someone? Do you not care enough to waste my time to maybe answer the question?
A lot of the VCs don't publish that information. Yeah, okay, so go Google it first. Blackbird, Airtree, Folklore, a lot of them do publish it, but you guys don't. You don't have it on there.
It's just so vanilla, though. It's like everyone else.
No, this is good, though, because like I said, there's differences across each one. And you should feel them out as well. I forgot what my second one was. I was going to tell them too.
Well, I'll fill in too, and you can jump on it. So, everyone thinks fundraising will be hard. Everyone also thinks they can somehow do it quicker than everyone else. It's I don't understand. Fundraising is hard. It will take you 6 months or more from start to finish, because you've got to go through so many steps. It's people think they're ready once you sign a term sheet, but then there's legal arguments, and somehow it's always the company that holds this up because they want to argue one word or something, or the company's lawyer. But that takes another month or two, and then you wire the money after that, and then you've closed your round. It's a long process, and I think it doesn't really matter what our process is. They all look pretty similar, slightly longer, slightly less. But what's most important is you can't fundraise quicker than everyone else just because you manage a tight sales funnel. Even those people still take 6 months or more from start to finish. So it's very important to not think you're the special egg that will be different to everyone else.
Leave 6 months.
Right? Yeah, leave 6 months, and even then, that's maybe not when the money will be in the bank. So don't count on it being 6 months from start to finish.
So there are funds and also people that are more follow-ons who will put money in after you've got a lead investor. And there are also people who are willing to write that first check. And sometimes
That's a good question to ask
Yeah, I was gonna say sometimes they will not straight up say that. I'll tell you, like I am one of the people that like, yeah, take my first check, we'll help you get the rest. But other people may not be like that, and so it's good to try to feel them out to say like, hey, like, what was the last investment that you did? Were you the first check in, or like did you follow on? And that's a softer question than saying, hey, are you a champion or are you a follower? So you can ask it in a softer way and kind of feel them out to see like, is this the fund or the person that's gonna be that champion write the first check? Or is this the fund that really likes to see there's a lead investor and we like to co-invest? So that's a good question to ask. Yeah, and Eliza agrees with me, so we're on that one.
We also can disagree freely, it's good. The other thing is, I mentioned it before, but due diligence is a process that you will go through the second you take, you could jump in here, but the second you take institutional money. So the second you're raising kind of $1 million or more, we all have a pretty set list and it's available online. Like everyone in the world publishes a list of like set due diligence for Series A or whatever of documents. It sucks. Putting that list together takes like a couple of days of the CEO's time. It's annoying, but it's what we need to know that there you go, whatever. I'm maybe too efficient, but it's what we need to know that you're a real business. You're incorporated. You have these contracts that you're telling us about. It's us validating the conversations that we've had. And it's also kind of boring on our side to read through and be like, sweet, they've actually signed this contract. It's dated. They have a constitution. But like if you have that folder ready and you have like a list of investors that you want to contact and like why you want to contact them, you start the process maybe more like a special egg that's going to circumvent 6 months than someone who just thinks they're going to be quicker. So there are things you can do to like lower the barriers to fundraising on your side, and mostly that's getting organized and understanding like what the steps of the process are and how you can be ready to be like, I've got a data room, I'm ready to go, like it's already ready.
And if you would like a link to what should be in your data room, please reach out. We have templates for that. And it shortens it to like 5.5 months, so you're good, right?
I really agree with the data room, but what I was going to say too is if you can keep iterating what you're doing all of the time as well when you're pitching and your deck, and really if your data room starts having documents on those key things you're getting pushback on and your rebuttal to that, that makes it so much smoother as well. So really listen to the questions, listen to the pushback. If someone says no, ask why, dig, and then come back stronger from that, because you're going to get more no's than yeses, so make the best of them.
So you mentioned how people could potentially reach out. So what are the things that they need to send to you? How do you like being approached? And also, you guys must see a lot of deals a year. So roughly, how many do you think you look at and how many do you think you select?
Okay. I'm a little bit different in that sense. I guess I probably see more deals than the average angel, purely because I just like to review pitch decks and I speak at things like this and I encourage people to send me their pitch deck. The main thing is the pitch deck. Now, when I say pitch deck, what I actually mean is a fully readable, on its own, investor pitch deck. So I don't want to see your sales pitch deck. I want to see your investor pitch deck, and I want it to be something that I can read in its entirety in an email PDF format. I personally don't enjoy it when you send me a video. I personally don't enjoy it when you send me some interactive choose your own adventure website or anything else. I like things in formats that I understand or that are structured. I could be different in that sense, and that's probably to shake your head. But I probably look at about anywhere between 500 to 1,000 deals a year. And that ranges from anything from having a conversation with the founder to just reviewing a pitch deck to going to a demo day to talking to a founder here and then they send me something afterwards. But that's probably a bit high for an angel. You're probably looking at the average angel's looking at about 200 deals a year. Some of the larger VCs are looking at up to 5,000 deals per year. So maybe you can tell us how many do you look at?
And how many do you select?
Select to...
Investing.
Oh, to invest? I've done 13 investments in startups so far. So 13 total in 2 years and 26 months. Look at that. I'm talking about it like it's my baby. My baby is 26 months old. No. Yeah, in about 2 years.
Your baby's got a long way to grow. We are like a typical VC, but smaller. So there's me and one other guy. And so the two of us, probably the funnel is like, well, I'm guessing a little bit here. I haven't looked at our numbers lately, but it's like 1,200 companies at the top. There's two of us. There's like 355 days in a year. Maybe we meet like 200 companies or 300 companies. We invest in we'd probably go into diligence on like 20 of those, and we'll invest in maybe 5 or so a year new companies. And then there's a bunch of kind of follow-on activity of previous companies that we've already invested in that are fundraising. That's probably our funnel, which is pretty typical of a venture firm. The funnel of a firm just depends on how many people are in it and what stage they invest. So if you're a late stage investor, you literally monitor the websites of the early stage investors to watch what they're investing in, and that's your funnel. When you're doing that early stage investing like seed, you have to find the deals yourself. And so that's the funnel.
Yeah, I always feel like my fund, because it's so particular, we have the opposite problem to a lot of VCs. So we have to really go and hunt deals down, right? So the tech transfer offices are meant to bring us things, but actually we know that everyone's keeping the best stuff from the tech transfer offices. So we have to go into faculty, go into researchers, really try and understand what's going on and meet the researchers. And then we have to do a lot of heavy lifting ourselves. But if I just look at our funnel, officially we get, depending on the year, last year was not great for research, but 150 to say 250 disclosures a year. That's, the technologies that have been patented in our research partners. And then from that, we might have 55 along to present. We might have half of those that we go into diligence, and then we invest in sort of 5 to 6 a year. So that's sort of our funnel. But I have a different problem, I guess, to other VCs. I'm not sort of getting this, I'm not choking on the fire hose. I'm sort of like, being the hound, basically.
Maybe just on that, you've heard this before, probably. I'm just going to say it again. It's really important. Think about sitting in my position and having 1,200 companies to go through. I'm not spending long on every pitch deck because I can't. But if you send me your deck through the inbox that I created on the website, which, by the way, so you know, goes to a completely different email because my email's already overwhelmed, that's my last priority. If you can't find a way to meet in this room or at an event or whatever, I try and be accessible. I try and be I make it my business to respond to everyone who comes to my inbox or comes to me in some way. But find a warm intro. It's not a lie. That is my last priority in a long list of things to do. And every venture firm is the same. So this whole find a warm intro thing, and the audience we have here is particularly challenging for women that I speak to and female founders. And so every female founder that I meet, I make it my business to say, in every single meeting, who is an investor in the ecosystem you would like to meet but do not have a way into, and I will introduce them. And that's a warm intro. It's just going out of your way to try and find ways to the people that you want to get to, because that cold inbox is overflowing and last priority.
There's this awesome event called 361 Angels where you can meet angel investors as well.
I will say there are a number of people in the ecosystem who are similar to me, and I actively encourage, send me your stuff. Send it to me, and I will do my best to at least give you a couple word answers to be this is absolutely not for me, or it's total shit, or whatever it is. I will be honest, but for the most part, and in particular, if I find if you are a female founder and you reach out to me, I will go out of my way to make sure that you at least have some intros into the ecosystem, because I feel that is absolutely important in what we're doing and how we can get not only more females in the room, but also more female investors in the room. Yes. I speak at events. I actively encourage people to send their stuff to me so that I can pass it on to the appropriate people. But there are others like me out there, and it's really good to find those champions because, like Liza said, the cold email pitch, the pitch us button on the website is generally not the best place to go.
So lots of great advice so far. Now the juicy questions. I'd love to hear some war stories if you're open to sharing any. Have there been any big mistakes or reasons why you haven't invested in certain companies? I don't know if maybe they've given up too much equity or or deals. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Can I ask the obverse of that as well?
Of course.
Things that really stood
course, yeah.
The first thing, and the other two ladies here will probably agree with me, is are you the right person? Like, I have loved business ideas. Siri, FYI, Siri is not the right person. She does not agree. That's great. No, there are so many things where I'm like, that is an amazing idea and I wish that existed, or I can think of a huge market for that. I love that. And I'm like, you are not the right person for that, though. So really think really think deeply about whether you are the right person to do this, because you might be an amazing entrepreneur, like have the biggest hustle in the world and the best idea, but if you don't actually know anything about that space, you're unlikely to get money from anyone up here. I've got other things, but maybe doesn't anyone want to...
Okay, I'm going to go to investment-related ones more as like a warning / alert for you if you do go on the fundraising path. One is strategic investors. So the word strategic investor usually means a corporate entity, like a bank or a real estate trust or whatever it might be. They pose great danger, but in success they're great, and it's awesome to have them on your side. But quite commonly I hear this refrain of like, oh, they're a customer, and if they're invested on our cap table, they'll be aligned and they'll never leave us. And it's a false refrain, because if you have someone at that entity, like I don't want to name a company. Let's just say it's a shopping centre. If you have this shopping centre on your cap table and you have a really good relationship with the CEO or the innovation team or whoever it is, that person always changes. Like, corporate turnover is high, and the second that person leaves, you are no longer in their strategic priorities. Or maybe they stay there, but the CEO changes the direction and there's no innovation budget. What usually happens in these situations is their corporate entity wants to take like a meaningful stake, and so they take 20, 40, 50% of the company in exchange for something that might be fair at the time. But when that investor can no longer follow on, like continue to invest in your company, if you want to raise money or you need a bridge or your company's in trouble, even if you want to raise like a small amount relative to what you've raised previously, you would expect that to come from your existing investors. And if they don't invest, like there's 50% of the amount of your cap table and you're raising $1 million, $500K you have to go and find from new people. And that's hard. And usually that happens when the business is not going well. And you need to think very carefully about whether there are actually advantages of having this person as an owner of your company as opposed to a customer. We see it really commonly. It's almost always a bad sign, and it's a negative signaling risk when you go and raise capital from VC that your existing investors aren't continuing to back you on the journey, because if you're the next Canva, everyone wants to be on that journey with you. And so the war story there is like, I've seen it like 20 times this year. Like, that's how common this is, that like a corporate will change their view and no longer stay on the journey, and then someone needs to find new investors, but no new investors want to come on board when everyone else is trying to get out. It's just a tough place to put yourself in, and I don't think at the early stage it's a necessary thing to do. So like, have a real think through and a real like session with an investor of, is this the right pathway? And it might be. These can be great when they work out, but when they don't work out, they can almost single-handedly destroy a business.
Yeah, good points. I would just say that when you're talking to us, like people like us, you want to feel like you can get in the trenches with them and you can fight a war with them, and that you'll be able to go through thick and thin. And that diligence period is also about you finding out more about them and liking them and trusting them and knowing that they're on your side and they're going to fight for you. So I've seen a lot of businesses go south because they've actually had the wrong investors, and those investors end up pretty much just getting in their way and just causing them so much more grief and pain than anyone deserves. So I think this is a warning for you that, even when I'm dealing with other investors, I'm thinking about, when we're approaching them, do I want to work with them? Do I want to be on the board with them? Can I work with that person? I think that's super important. And yeah, sort of that sticking to your knitting and your strengths. Like, as a founder, you do need to learn a whole bunch of stuff really quickly, and you need to get across everything. But at some point, you're going to have to, hand the reins to people perhaps who can do it better. So I think it is about knowing what you're good at and what you're not going well at. I'm working with someone at the moment who's the CEO and not good at letting go. And it's really holding the business back. And so all of those things that were strengths have now become weaknesses. It's funny how that coin flips. So grow with the business.
Yeah, apparently an investor relationship lasts longer than a marriage these days.
It does.
So
It absolutely does.
Find a good investor to.
I've got another. So you asked about war stories, and speaking of getting into bed with investors, in the very early days. Oh wait, actually, we're not going to go. No, that's not where it's going at all. No, but in the early days, you're going to be looking for money. And Eliza talked about the very early days, the friends, family, and fools around. And so what you might end up raising on is something called a safe note or a convertible note. They're getting very popular. The thing with the safe notes and the convertible notes is that you do it basically on an individual investor basis, which is great because that means that you can close 20, 30, 50K from one investor and be able to get that money in the bank without having to close this full round of $500,000. Here's where it goes wrong. So, let's say I reach out to Eliza. She's my fool right here. And I'm like, hey, give me a 50K check. And she's like, yep, absolutely. Send me your safe note. And I send that over. And she reads through it and she goes, yep, I'm all good except for these 3 things. And I go, oh, but I really want her money. So, okay, I'm going to change those 3 things. And then I talk to Best Day and I go, hey, Best Day, really would like your money. She's like, yeah, I'm totally in. Send me your safe note. Okay, here's my safe note. And she's like, oh, all good, except for these 2 things that are different from the 3 things that Eliza changed. And this happens, say, 10 times. And then what happens with a safe note is it actually converts. So the point of a safe note is that you don't have to put a straight up value on your business at the time of getting that money. So let's say a year goes by, we've got 10 safe notes out there, each one with slightly different terms. And then you go to raise your VC funding. So, then I go to VC A and I go, hey, will you give me $2 million? They go, absolutely, this is great. And I go, great, we're going to convert these 10 safe notes. And then we look at the safe notes and they are all different on all different terms. And then I need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers who can figure out how all of these safe notes are going to convert properly. So here's my advice. And I've seen this happen, by the way. And I've seen VC deals collapse because of it, because the VC goes, no, we're out. This is too complicated. If you raise on a safe or a convertible note, make them all the same. No exceptions. Do you hear me? No exceptions. And the other thing, though, is if an angel comes back to you and says, I don't agree to this term, it's probably not an angel you want to work with. If your safe note is pretty standard, and there are standard ones, like the AIC Council has them, Airtree has them, as long as you're not screwing with it, use the standard ones, there's no reason for an angel to come back to you and say no. I can tell you right now, in the 13 deals that I've done, I have not changed a single thing. They're all vanilla, and I've never pushed back on those deals, because if they don't understand that if the deal goes well, the term sheet doesn't really matter. If it doesn't go well, also doesn't matter.
Thank you. Do we have time for just a... good? Sorry, could you...
That was it. That was my story. Okay. Don't let angels change your safe note.
And don't do a safe on a safe. That's also very bad behavior. It's really common. We've got a company in a portfolio that's got 3 or 4 in a row, and no one knows what they convert at. It's impossible math. We're now paying people to do the math.
I've done too, and it's like a brain bleed.
It's so bad.
We got there, but I had to have 2, savants help me. Exactly.
Amazing. Maybe final, just going off the question before, what is something that really you look for when you
I didn't get to say this before, but it's like a job interview. If you go into a job interview and you don't ask insightful questions and you look like you want the job really bad, those aren't usually the jobs you get or where they want you. This is a 2-way street of it's a sales process on both sides. In success, you should sit there and ask me questions throughout or at the very beginning I think leaving your questions to the end of a meeting is a bit submissive and like not a good way to start the relationship. Like, it's so common, I think, that founders expect to pitch. And sometimes I go to a meeting and I'll say to the founder, like, how do you want to run this meeting? And the founder will use it as an advisory meeting. Like, I've got some questions I'd love to ask you, or I'm thinking about fundraising in 3 months. Can I ask you some questions? I think that's excellent. Like, I have full respect for you for thinking through how you can build a relationship with me before you want to fundraise. Switching on to like fundraise mode, pitch mode is not the most productive thing you could do at the beginning of a meeting with a VC. So like my advice is like, think about this as like the closest analogy that we've all been through as a job interview, where you have full power to drive the conversation in a way that you want, regardless of the questions that we ask and the way different venture people want to run a meeting. It's like, run the meeting for yourself, because you need to get as much out of it as we do. And in theory, like flip the narrative a little bit and think like, I'm building something really powerful here. It should be a privilege for them to invest. So it's like the power sits on both sides.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Wow, I think for our fund, it's for researchers, so it's a little bit different. We don't look for people, we look for a big problem, a solution that can be protected and a good business plan. But, I mean, other than that, I just feel like advice to you would be that I think when I was on the other side of the table and looking for money, I put too much on VCs as being, experts and things like that. But we're not, we can't get across everything. We're not perfect at everything. And so when you get put downs and put backs, I think, let it galvanise you, let it carry you forward. Look at what in your pitch you're not answering to, just hit that thing on the head, because you will get there. It is a numbers game. You get better as you go. I listened to this awesome podcast recently on raising, and of course it escapes me, but it was with Jason Calacanis this week in Startups, and the guy started off with his process. I forgot which business he was in, but I just thought, wow, that is the most amazing process. So listen and learn as much as you can from other founders, from VC podcasts, like get to be a startup expert, and that will help you in your business.
That's so true. Because if you think that you know everything, I guarantee you that I'm going to shut off. I'm going to shut off, and there's probably 99% of us that will just shut off in the meeting. Because there is a term that some of us like to call coachability, and I mean, too much of it. Like if you just listen to everything that everybody says and try to implement everything, that's not so good. But you need to be able to take in feedback. You don't necessarily have to action that feedback if you don't think that it's the best thing for your business, but you need to be able to take in feedback and take in advice, and you're going to get a fuck ton of it. Sorry. You are going to get a lot of it in this, in the course of your journey, like so much of it. And your job as a founder is to take all of it in, not reject the stuff that you don't like, but take it all in and then make the best decisions for your business and your context. Because nobody knows the business and what you're doing and the problem that you're solving better than you do. So make decisions based on what you think is best for your business, but know that you need to take what others are saying in, because if you don't think that you need to take it in, then you're gonna miss the good stuff, even though it's very small.
Thank you so much.